Senator Paxton, you're recognized for a motion to suspend the regular order of business on Senate Bill 609.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I move to suspend the regular order of business to take up and consider Senate Bill 609. As a legislature, we pass bills to require school districts to adopt certain policies to address issues and concerns in Texas schools. Senate Bill 609 simply requires local education agencies such as school districts, charter schools, their boards of trustees or governing bodies, and their personnel to implement and act in accordance with any policy the local education agency is required by statute to adopt. I move to suspend.
Senator Paxton moves suspension of the regular order of business on Senate Bill 609. There is objection. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Buttoncourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa, Nueces, Hinojosa, Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson.
There being 23 ayes and 7 nays, the rules are suspended. Chair lays out on second reading Senate Bill 609. The Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 609 relating to requiring independent school districts, homeroom school districts, and open enrollment charter schools to comply with legally required policies.
The following amendment.
Floor Amendment Number 1 by Menendez and Perry.
Senator Menendez, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I completely understand the spirit of this legislation. And I can tell you that when I was working on David's law, the cyberbullying law, more than anyone, I wanted every single school district to have a cyberbullying policy. I want every school district to do everything they can. Then when we worked unanimously to also at that bill, and then secondly, the Holocaust Remembrance Week bill, I wanted every school district to embrace it, to teach the kids. But not all school districts are the same. And I remember distinctly having a conversation with our colleague, Charles Perry, Senator Perry, and he came to me and he said, Jose, I've got some school districts that are so small that even though they may want to do what your bill does, they just can't. We've got a superintendent driving a school bus. They don't have the capacity. And so this amendment is very, very simple. It simply says to our educators, our superintendents, our school board members who are working hard to invest and to comply with the high standards that we pass here, is we want to give them the ability to support legislation and through providing understanding for the school districts who are trying in good faith to comply with their policies. This provides the needed protections for the school districts who are doing their very best to find themselves in the midst of scrutiny from TEA. I find it somehow a little bit ironic that sometimes TEA will provide waivers for certain things. You know, they'll issue a waiver, but that's on a case-by-case basis, and it doesn't help everyone. And so I just would like to see a good faith effort, because I am concerned that if we don't have this, then everything we pass to make our school districts do something could be seen potentially as an unfunded mandate. Let me tell you, I would love it if we could get our student to counselor ratio down from the current 800 to 1 down to 200 to 1, but we can't afford it. That's what I'm told. And so that's what this amendment does. It's pretty simple. As you can see by the amendment, Senator Perry has joined me on it. He may have something to say about it. And so I will yield to Senator Perry. I think he's given me the signal that he'd like to say something about it.
Senator Perry, for what purpose?
Conversation with the amendment authors, which is me too.
Menendez, do you yield?
Of course I do.
Yeah, and so yesterday when you brought it up, I had not really researched a whole lot of it. I'd agree with you in principle. And I said good faith was pretty subjective, right? And so what I did is I went back and got with my rural representatives in those associations that are all rural, and they keep me abreast. And then I talked with TEA also, and what they said, that rural is covered by process today. And what I mean by that, yes, they're expected to follow state law. In that consideration, this is a policy conversation that they're supposed to develop policies to implement those laws. But in that implementation process, if they're called out, if someone files a complaint, they're not following state law, and their policy's there, but in that policy it says we don't have resource. We can't come up with, and I used an example, if we said you got to have a 1-to-20 ratio for mental health services, it's not as much as the money it is, but there may not actually be that kind of workforce to support that,
Exactly.
that TEA considers all of those factors. So it's not like they're going to be punished. So at the end of that, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. It was kind of late in the day. The amendment as it's currently written probably undermines the bill author's purpose, but I got enough comfort that rural districts are still covered by process, that TEA has that formal, very, very kind of, we know that resource limitations will cause inabilities to actually comply 100%. So that's kind of where that is, and I didn't get back to you, and it's not that I'm against the premise, it's just, I think they're covered. And my rural guys were like, we're not, my rural representatives, not just the superintendents, but the actual persons that's responsible for tracking bills and stuff, we don't have a heartburn about the bill. So I'm going to have to say at that point, with the subjectiveness of it, I can't really push that through because it doesn't do my fear was and what your conversation is.
So, question, how does the process the TA would use to somehow provide TEA latitude, does that apply to small school districts, small urban or poor school districts?
I think it applies to any district that has a legitimate policy conversation that we just do not have the resource at personnel or financially or whatever reason it is. That's given a one-on-one review. From my world, it's typically a personnel issue. They just don't have the resources in the community to support those needs. Now, finances and going back to rural districts, when I say rural, we're talking 100 body school districts, right? And if you lose 10% of these through the ESA conversations, that's why I'm really guarded on making those money stay with the student and not to an online instruction. So that's those nuances that rural communities have, because fixed costs are fixed costs.
Right.
And they may not be able to add to those fixed costs just the actual people to do what we're asking them to do sometimes. So they say TA has got that latitude. They do use it very judiciously on policy conversations that we expect the school district to do, but they can't comply. So I feel comfortable they're doing that. I felt comfortable. We didn't hear a lot of uproar from the rural community. This is not going to help us at any level. It's going to cost us both not ability to do it and then what comes with non-compliance. So TEA says they use that. They already have that process. I wish I'd have gotten to you. Not a problem. I was with you in concept immediately.
Yeah.
Good faith is subjective. I said that, but let me check. And as I checked, it came back, we're good as it's currently standing. So does that help? It doesn't help you on the amendment, but at the end of the day, it gave me comfort there is a process for review where districts that are called out for, quote, not complying with state law, that TEA has a process in which they can work through to show that that's the only option on the table. I wish I could drop in a bunch of money and a lot of expertise that rural districts lack, but I will do the flip side. A lot of the rural districts don't have the same complexities of an urban district because of sheer numbers. You know, in a 100 student population body, you probably know every kid and every parent knows every kid. So there's a different environment, which a lot of the issues that some of our urban, but to your point, poor districts and rural districts, a lot alike, don't have some of the hard issues that we're trying to solve from a state level. So it's a fortunate place to be, but they still miss out on some things too.
Understood.
All right.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, sir.
Again, intent, but I don't think it fits the need that I thought it was going to try to address.
Good.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So in closing, Mr. President, I just want to say that whether TEA has a process or not, this amendment protects your school district. And if you have a school district that can't afford to have a police officer on every campus, or has a trouble finding a guardian, or has trouble paying for the upgrades we want, this says I'm making a good faith effort. And that's what this amendment does. And believe me that if you vote for this amendment, we pass it, your school districts will be happy. I move adoption of floor amendment number 1.
Senator Gutierrez, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman of the author yield for a question?
The author of the amendment, do you yield, Senator Menendez?
Yes, Mr. President, I yield.
Yeah, that came out wrong, didn't it?
Senator
The author of
Gutierrez,
the
you're
amendment
recognized.
yield for a question. There you go. Now I can speak English.
It's your second language. It's okay.
That's right. Senator Menendez, we passed some legislation last session, did we not?
We did.
On school safety, correct?
Yes, we did.
I had a bill that would have put a cop in every school paid for by the state of Texas. That bill went nowhere.
Correct.
You're aware.
I am.
And yet, as a body, we said that every school would have a police officer. And that was passed. That did pass, did it not?
Yes, or a marshal.
Right, or marshal with no funding behind it. And so poor and rural school districts had to go out and make choices in this space as to who they were going to cut to bring in the marshal or the cop, correct?
Yes,
With no funding help from the state of Texas.
that's correct.
And that's what you're talking about here today.
Yes, that's one of the many issues that I'm talking about.
One of many, many, many unfunded mandates that this legislative body and the one across the hall there does over and over again, and you're just giving us a safety valve by your amendment.
Absolutely. I just look, I want the school districts to abide by every single law we pass. I want them to have, whether they choose a police officer, a marshal, resource officer, I want them to all abide by David's law, the cyberbullying law, Holocaust Remembrance Week. But some of them say we don't have the personnel, the capacity, et cetera. And so if they make a good faith, if they can show us, then I'm good with that. But I'm trying to help us make sure that our school districts don't feel like we're providing any more unfunded mandates.
Well, I know that there was an exchange here between you and Senator Perry. I know of no such district that has found a way out of the police officer piece, and they've been stuck with that unfunded mandate. So I want to thank you. I think this is a good amendment.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Move adoption.
Chair recognizes Senator Paxton on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Menendez. And we talked a little bit about this in the hearing on the bill. And I appreciate you recognizing the spirit of this is certainly not going at creating some sort of backdoor way of creating unfunded mandates. The purpose of the bill is simply to really marry up the intention that we have as a legislature that we don't just want districts to adopt policies, but also to adhere to those policies. And so with great respect, I'll be opposing the amendment.
Senator Paxton, to clarify, you will be opposing the amendment.
Oppose the amendment, yes.
The Secretary will call the roll on the amendment.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa of Nueces, Hinojosa of Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson.
There being 11 ayes and 19 nays, the amendment fails. Correction on the vote count. There being 12 ayes and 18 nays, the amendment fails. Chair recognizes Senator Paxton for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move passage to engrossment.
Senator Paxton moves passage to engrossment. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Blanco, Campbell, Cook, Creighton, Eckhart, Flores, Gutierrez, Hagenbu, Hall, Hancock, Hinojosa of Nueces, Hinojosa of Hidalgo, Huffman, Hughes, Johnson, Colcourse, Menendez.
There being 23 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is passed to engrossment. Senator Paxton will hold there.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members.
$660.